How's it going, everybody? It's been a couple of weeks since my last upload. I figure it's probably about time. The last couple of weeks I've been traveling a little bit, spending some time trying to really come to grips with loss. For those that don't know, I don't think I've talked about it on here yet. My father passed away in January of this year. And realized over the last couple of weeks that I never really mourned his loss. It never really struck me as sad in the traditional sense. Um, I don't know if that's right or not. I don't know if there's necessarily a quote unquote correct way to process loss like that. Um, but I always thought that after he passed, what I kind of always thought in my head was that um, because of the nature of his and my relationship, him and I were pretty close. But we were father and son. I mean, we gave each other a bunch of crap. Um, we had good times, but there was definitely a level of respect there from me to him, and I think to some degree, as much as you can, I guess, from him to me as well, right? Especially once I started becoming my own man over the years. Um, but in looking back at it, I think I probably maybe cried 2 or 3 times. And it's late August, so in about the 8 months, 7 months, 7, 8 months, 7 months. Yeah, that's how math works. Um, in about the 7 months since his passing, I think I've cried maybe 3 or 4 times total. Um, like for me, it's always kind of been, at least with him anyway. Um, he was willing to accept that it was his time to pass on. And as someone who respected him greatly, am I is it right of me to truly grieve that? If he was willing to accept it, I should have enough respect for him to respect his decision and accept it for what it was. I will miss him for a very long time, without question. I love my dad, man, for sure. Um, but there's a part of me that kind of looks at it and goes, he made the choices he made throughout his life. Um, and it just kind of keeps coming back to that same underlying question of what is going to be the best way for me to respect him and remember him as he was, for who he was, for the things he did, the choices he made, the sacrifices he made to bring us kids in, me and my 2 siblings, um, while at the same time also being willing to look at as much of it as I can with a realistic, um, not judgment on it, I guess. Judgment's probably not the right word, but taking a realistic eye to it. Because one of the things that before he passed, him and I had a conversation on was if he could go back throughout the years and change things and do things differently, would he have, and what would he have done? And I'm not going to get into his answers here because that's not something that I'm willing to share with anybody at this point. Well, with very, very few people, I should say. I think maybe 2 people, 3 people know at most. But I think, as with most people, he had a few answers to that. But all in all, he was accepting of the decisions he made with the information he had at the time. One of the things that really struck me was when he was looking back at it, there was a level of almost, if I had known what I know now, would I have done it differently? Maybe, but I'm not going to judge the me of that time because I didn't have the same level of information, right? Like hindsight's always 20/20. And you can, through that hindsight, you can learn things, but you also shouldn't cast aspersions at the version of you that made the decision you made in that moment, right? Um, so if like 20 years ago I made a decision, which I'm sure there's many, where like looking back now I was like, I probably should have done that a little bit differently. It's like, yes, you can and should look at those situations and go, if I could do it over again now, would there be changes I would make? Yes. But at the same time, you also have to recognize that you made the best decision you could. Assuming you did, right? With the information you had at the time, right? So try not to, don't over self-criticize on those things, I guess. Keep in mind the context of the time and information you had when that decision was made, I guess is the right way to put that. But it kind of got me thinking, like, is there something else I should be doing to mourn him? And I don't think there's a right answer to that, right? When I think loss tends to hit everybody very differently. Some people it crushes. I've seen a few folks that have lost family members that it absolutely just demolishes, and they're not really able to function for a while. I've also seen other folks who just lock themselves away emotionally and continue on about their day in their life. And then over time they start to peel that back. I don't necessarily think either of those are wrong. I think there's an optimal decision, but there's a big difference between something being not optimal and something being wrong. I think full implosion is probably the only response that I could see to something like that that would be arguably wrong, right? Or completely lashing out and tearing down other people maybe would be another case of that. But I mean, those are two pretty heavy extremes. I don't know. It's interesting. Excuse me. It's been a topic that's come up a couple of times as I've been thinking on things, and I don't know the right answer for me. I don't think I'm going to change the situation. I don't think I'm going to force myself to grieve, because that seems almost disingenuous. Because at that point it's not natural, right? And if I'm going to grieve, it should be pretty natural. But I've never really been one to cry a lot from people passing. Here or there maybe, but to me, death is not... I don't think death hits the same for me as it does for others. I mean, that might tie in a little bit to how much time and effort I spend trying to understand life and people, and some of that might also tie into the history I've had with suicide, and just the amount of people that I've known over the years who have died for a variety of reasons. I don't know exactly why. I don't know what that breakdown is. I haven't spent any time thinking about it, but it's interesting. And yeah, I think when it really comes down to it, I don't think there's a right answer, and I don't think there's a wrong answer either. No, outside of maybe the hyper extremes. But even then, I don't necessarily know if those are wrong. I think those are just more destructive than anything else, right? I don't know. Hmm. I think. Hmm. I think the message I would give to anybody who's going through and experienced any form of loss is the way you feel about it is the way you feel. Um, Try your best to not make other people suffer due to it. Um, like try not to cause external damage. Um, don't feel like you have to actually sit with someone and talk through it. You're more than welcome to, and if that's something you're interested in, by all means, please do. I found that it can help from time to time if you have someone in your life that you trust enough to do that. But when you're going through, at least from what I've been experiencing, when you're going through the loss of someone that you care about, especially someone you care about deeply, that's super important to you, um, you're going to question, if you're introspective at all, you're going to question here off and on whether or not the way you're handling it is healthy or right or beneficial or whatever the case may be. And I don't know if that's the right question to ask. Um, I haven't solidified on what the quote unquote right question to ask would be, because I don't think there is one. Uh, I'm sure there probably is. There probably are better choices or better questions to ask, but I think at the end of the day, it really just comes down to how best or how are you processing it, and are you? Because you can find yourself in situations where you're not at all, and for a time, fair enough. But eventually, you need to sit down and have that conversation with yourself. If you're interested, more power to you to bring in others. But just know that everyone loses people. If you've lost someone recently, I guarantee you know many people who, or even maybe just a few, depending on how small your circle is, that have gone through similar. And if they're your actual friends, I'm sure they'd love to sit and listen, provide feedback, talk about it if you're interested in that. Just understand that what you're going through is not wrong. You're not broken. You're not even lost. You're just unsure. And that's okay. Just day by day, keep putting one foot in front of the other and just walk. That's all you got to do. Just walk. So, if you're going through something, I hope you take that advice. Just keep walking. Not necessarily physically walking. I mean, that generally helps as well, but just walk. With that, I'll let you go. Have a good night.